Nothing to see here. Extensive sworn testimony now shows that statement was misleading at best because there was a lot to see.
That's right. And today, Marie Yovanovitch tells her story in public and under oath. She is today's only public witness in the impeachment inquiry. And unlike her dismissal, it's safe to say the hearing will draw enormous media attention, carried live on television, also here on NPR. Yovanovitch says her superiors recalled her much earlier than planned. Evidence now shows two Soviet-born businessmen wanted her out. They have been indicted for allegedly making illegal campaign donations to speed up her removal. So how does all this relate to the main issue of the impeachment inquiry, the president's drive for investigations? Well, let's listen back to the ambassador's story.
Marie-Louise Yovanovitch has testified before Congress before.
Pardon, members of this committee. It's an honor to appear before you today as President Obama's nominee to serve as the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine.
It was her confirmation hearing in 2016. She sat at the witness table with short hair, glasses, and a tan suit. She had brought along her elderly mother.
Like so many in Europe in the 1940s, including those in the Ukrainian American community, my parents survived poverty, war, and displacement. They finally arrived in the United States with me in tow, in search of freedom, accountability, and opportunity.
Marie-Louise Yovanovitch is an immigrant. Her family came from the former Soviet Union. It was a Russian-speaking family, and she answered to an affectionate Russian version of her name, Marie.
Everybody that ever worked with her knew her as Masha.
Carlos Pascual worked with Masha Yovanovitch because in the early 2000s, he was the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. It was a former Soviet republic with many Russian speakers, so he hired Russian-speaking Yovanovitch as his deputy. This immigrant, now a U.S. citizen, was part of the U.S. Foreign Service.
She had already been based in Moscow. She'd been based in Somalia. She really understood what it was to work in difficult hardship posts. One of the key things that emerged in Ukraine were the foundations for a civil society that retained a check and balance on power and government.
Civil society, that phrase means journalists, activists, and citizens groups whose work is vital for democracy. Yovanovitch made it her business to track and understand them. In 2004, not long after she finished her first assignment in Ukraine, those groups made history. One of our correspondents looked on.
A sea of several 100,000 people enthusiastically waving yellow and light blue Ukrainian flags into a bitterly cold, perfectly clear sky.
As Ukrainians displaced their government after a disputed election. Years later, Yovanovitch returned to Ukraine, this time as the top U.S. diplomat, the ambassador. The Senate confirmed her without controversy, though her assignment was tough. Russia had invaded Ukraine. At that 2016 confirmation, she told senators she was open to providing military aid to Ukraine. She also said she'd keep promoting civil society.
Building capacity within the journalistic community, within civil society, so that they themselves can get their own good news out, and they themselves can counter the Russian propaganda efforts.
In November 2016, the new ambassador invited civil society activists and others to an event to mark America's presidential election. Daria Kalenyuk, a Ukrainian anti-corruption activist, was among those who attended.
Ambassador Yovanovitch was hosting this reception. So for many Ukrainians, the victory of Trump was a big surprise.
Some were dismayed since Trump seemed sympathetic to Russia, but Kalenyuk recalls the U.S. ambassador delivering this reassuring message.
The United States will continue being the partner and supporter of Ukraine, and we congratulate our democracy. And she didn't express any frustration or anything.
Remember, she's a career diplomat. Unlike some ambassadors who are friends or supporters of a president, she served whoever was in the White House. Ukrainians say she was professional and worked hard to represent U.S. policy. Natalia Gamenyuk had many dealings with the ambassador as a journalist.
She was a good diplomat, but very, very reserved, so she was extremely cautious. She would never say anything beyond what the diplomat can say.
Yet the